Cool. I value morality. The standard is maximizing expected net well-being, prefer for 3 reasons. A, if there's even a risk of ethical uncertainty, we should always prioritize the survival of the human race to ensure future value. That's positive. 12. More uncertainty suggests that present anxiety may be confused. If we are uncertain, there is a value preserving our ability to recognize value into the future, according to the ensuring the future of humanity is the best way to reach future value. And B, governmental policy is constrained by limitation on the resources. Any governmental decision must account for trade-offs, which only utilitarian ethics can do. That's Mac. 4. Judicial sense is that the patient is an isolated universe, and decision involving multiple patients. More expenses are before one will meaningless loss for the other. One suggests is another person's failure. Therefore, all distribution questions should be settled according to maximizing welfare. Those tenants require the policy to be judged in terms of utilities achieved by it. C. No intent foresight distinction outweighs their justification on necessity. Ours are state specific, which is the act. That's inch in H7. Intending foresight distinction is more the preparation of defense than a genuine intent to determine what is to be done to evade responsibility. This is precisely what the states are not entitled to set up for it in policy decision in the global perspective that must be undertaken. Takes up no special relationship, there pursues no special interest, no unconscious flaws. And advantage 1 is leadership. U.S. military readiness is shrinking because of personnel shortage, which is key to successful operations. Klein reinvigorates readiness and solves overstretch as Finetti and all 17. Discussions around readiness resolve around resource people are the heart of the ready for human personnel. Policy tests for today's readiness challenged by inflowing the impact of both funding natively impact recruiting as members whose confidence everybody's military continues to shrink procedure, places higher man on the smaller number who remain, and military readiness is key to leadership and power projection, which independently solves great power. That's Kagan 12. Although China's rigid strategic position, geostrategic position is vertically several neighbors are strongly close to the U.S. It's a hard time becoming a regional hegemony in the United States. This rise to large has made true to avoid in 50 years. The future deficits are not caused by rising defense spending, and much less by defense spending on foreign assistance. The American military strength reduces access by deterrent conflict and lowers the price a lot cheaper to preserve Americans convince themselves the decline is inevitable. Underlying assumption is that the present world order will pursue preserving this has been a struggle. Requires constant American leadership. Decline is a choice. It's not an inevitable fate. And hegemony is sustainable, and Trump was the necessity of revitalizing institutional constraints, global containments, and foreign capabilities decisively go out. That's 17. Foreign policy establishment consider the U.S. new age of global hegemony, highlighting expression of great confidence in their durability. The U.S. hegemony denies the is wrong. The U.S. will remain the dominant power. Obama made great strides in expanding U.S. economic power. It will take decades for anyone, if anyone, to build the kind of military capability the U.S. possesses. We are the world's superpower. China would eventually surpass the U.S. Nevertheless, officials expressed certainty about our ability to deal with China. Officials in the Trump administration indicated the military power to confront China attempts to gain control of the South China Sea. We're going to have to cynically assume Russia is reasserting itself on the global stage. Russia has much less power. The U.S. pulled out from the international stage. Terminal would ensue. American interests remain the same. Mentality is superbly qualified knowledgeable about the international scene and geopolitics. Much of what Trump has done in foreign policy is Obama policy. Trump is starting to understand the United States is indispensable. The empire is here to stay and hesitant impact filter. Collapse makes all of the impacts worse. That's Brooks at all 13. The current strategy reduces the risk of dangerous conflict in states with as aspiration for regional hegemony, or the United States would be the least would intensify the regions security dilemmas easily. The U.S. withdrawal from the key regions could lead to dangerous competition, greater regional insecurity, could also produce cascading nuclear proliferation. If we should consider for the regional hegemony, China, the United States would need to maintain its key alliances. American leadership benefits many countries to counter terrorism, piracy, organized crime, climate change, pandemic states have to work together, and no risk of bad U.S. intervention or inevitable. It's only a question of making it effective. That's Kagan 11. In theory, the United States to refrain from intervening, but in practice, sentiment against involvement, favoring the United States to intervene again. Some have hoped that a small military involved by necessity would prevent intervening more likely, would simply prevent intervening effectively. This has been the experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. The administration said future results over lengthy and successful conflicts and the loss of confidence they made from cheaper to long term to fight wars quickly and conclusively, and advantage to civil-military relations. Massive divide between civilians and military now. Draft solves laundry list of impacts key to readiness, preventing wars, lower cost of wars, and uniting multiple wars. That's McFadden 17. These soldiers move vital assets of the military traditional agreement. Separation between the American people and its military threatens the geostrategic economic improvement. No longer do our military service members who accurately represent the military, the country, a society, associating a gap. The current political environment has potential to impact civilian and military relations. The imbalance of representation used to read the disconnect between our military and the population serves to reduce the overall diversity. The geographic stationing of military personnel lines to divide the veteran representation in Congress has been on a state decline, impacting elements of governing body like defense is oversight and policy shaping. The alternatives to a current process structure is a draft selective service, the only societal link that the vast majority of people have with its military. The U.S. has been successful executed draft compulsory service, including connecting civilians with military awareness and foreign policy, ability to unite different cultures and classes, citizens, and potential for civilian leaders to understand the cost of war. Expertise like cybersecurity is definitively strong. The ability to tap into talent could be decisive advantage in the next war in order to ensure the inventory of the country's best who are willing to serve and protect. And thus the plan: the United States federal government should make national service in the armed forces compulsory. Solvency: draft is key to recruits and tech. It also restrains militaries and broadly. That's South 17. Restarting the draft could be done. The wars have been structured. The military just breaking point bonuses are fighting to limit civilians are disconnected from the military cost center. So recent plans to increase the military call for the bonuses, limiting bonuses, so reducing recruitment budgets would cut costs. They're considering the government can pull the best candidates among the young people, which will raise the quality achievement. Scholars are not enlisting by leveraging conscription. The government could get the highly qualified people into the ranks. And the nation seems to be sent its all-volunteer military, and the conference war plan in 27 years producing the all-volunteer military. News engaged in 19 overseas military operations between 1973 and 2012. The military executed 144 operations. If there were conscripts, there would be more questions by Congress. The argument for the draft is a backdoor approach to any interventionist wars. And we use the status heuristic, which means we learn about it without being in our affirmative. Teaches contingent, but engagement of grounds and opens the space for critiquing constructive engagement. That's denied. 14. Argument for resistance for government or not limited rejection is founded in struggles within the government limitations to transform the decision questions over simplifications of complex political relations, nurtures respective skepticism, the universal good or bad actions as abstract solutions. Government as a heuristic minds careful differentiations rather than overarching immunizations of power and fostering ethics political engagement chicken through plural practices. The main constitutes attention to what happens instead of what ought to be. Such ethics of engagement would not with revolution. It would require reflexivity and consequences of political choices by position, leads not to apathy but to hyper and pessimistic activism, and refusing institutional engagement sees the political the fascist right to be offered space for the rule experimentation that enables broad-based and multi-modal forms of politics. That's Connolly 17. To forgo electoral politics would be to see even more power of the radical right in their institution. The right can deploy. Mark it as the right can deploy.
Where is that from?
It's like sort of the first sentence.
Okay. Wait, can you just... Okay, I see. Yeah, I got it. Okay, thanks. Okay, you good?
Yeah.
The second advantage, why is it good to close the civil military gap?
Several reasons. First, it is key to preventing wars. So in a world in which we have civil-military relations, we are more knowledgeable about wars and the cost of wars. And when people die, we recognize that that happens. So it reduces wars. It's also key to readiness because it means people understand how military works.
So what is the relation between reducing wars and the readiness stuff? Readiness.
What do you mean by the relation?
Like, how do the two of them interact?
I guess
that makes sense.
Reducing, like both of them are related, right? The readiness argument is it's a deterrence effect, namely other countries don't want to go to war with the United States or pose a threat at a risk that the United States have overpowered.
Doesn't us being afraid of going to war mean that we're like less?
It's not afraid of going to war, it's understanding the cost of wars and being resistant to going to wars except when necessary.
Okay, that's fine. So the solvency stuff, this is talking about, or actually, yeah, you say the costs are soaring in the school. How does the plan resolve that?
Cost, right?
Yeah,
it says the.
solvency evidence.
I don't specifically know referring to cost. It indicates that the military. So it says that the cost of military personnel is increasing, namely that the way in which we are able to fund, or like the cost of a volunteer military is increasingly expanding. We need the draft as a mechanism by decreasing that cost because we don't have to pay them as much.
You don't have to. Oh, okay.
Right, because otherwise we have to offer incentives, right? A volunteer workforce has to pay more than like private sector.
All right. So the argument is just that you end up paying them less.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the argument.
Yeah. So back to civil military.
Sure.
How does the act end up resolving things like exemptions for certain people to get out of
How does it do what?
How does the act resolve things like exemptions that keep some people, i.e. the rich, from serving?
Sure. There's not like the affirmative. The South 17 evidence indicates that the selective service organization chooses who goes and is conscripted rather than like the people just get out of it. Also, just in general, right? So rich people also have like kids, and they also like non-rich people are also employed. So even if rich people aren't necessarily involved in civil military relations, more people and people around them being conscripted and like put into the military still exposes them
So
to like.
I guess my question is like, which group is having more impact on political participation, and like who ends up going to war?
Who ends up going?
Or I guess
so. Like everyone is involved, right? Often the rich have a lot of political power, and when they just choose, the poor or like people who have less political power naturally still vote for who goes and has access, and are also able to make protests and are able to dispense this.
What is the impact?
There's not like a
what does the impact of
specific-
these protests have?
What?
What's the impact of these protests have?
The impact of protests?
Yeah.
It means they're less likely to go to war.
Why?
Why? Because like Vietnam, for instance, we pulled out and left Vietnam because there was a massive resistance. We got rid of the draft or no, yeah.
Why is that true in the status quo?
What?
Why is that true in the status quo? Trump hasn't really been caring much about his popularity rate.
Sure, but there are other people other than Trump who have power over like the military and the ability to go to wars. AKA still checks them, and they still have like midterms coming up in 2018, and are still have to be complacent with like the rest of the population.
That's fine. Oh yeah, you read some stuff in the South, or I'm not sure if it's the South evidence or the civil military stuff that talks about like it being good for cyber war. What's the impact of cyber war? Or like for cybersecurity, what's the impact of cybersecurity?
It just means we're more prepared in instances of war, so wars are changing.
Is there an impact of cybersecurity? Yeah.
There's like a line thing of evidence which indicates it would allow us to adjust to new forms of war. The example it gives is cyber war.
Okay.
It's not like an extinction for cyber wars.
Before you take in orders 2 on the case, it'll be top down on the apples on the dock.
You said how much taken?
138. 322.
You said 2 off in case? Is there no specific order on this?
Top down.
Two off case.
Yep, top down on case. Let me know when you guys are good.
Yeah, I got it.
Judges? I value morality, the metaphysics practical reason, but for one, their favorite collapse might be conceived in questioning reason, relies on reason, which concedes the authority of reason. 2, action theory. When one wills an action, one wills up all the steps that make the action. The practical reason unifies all the steps in action. And action theory comes first. If one can't have any cogent theory of action, one can't generate the normal force necessary that anyone ought to do anything next. Maxims must be universalizable. 1, otherwise moral claims lack the normal force to cause anyone to take an action. 2, claims must come a priori, otherwise there's only true as a matter of chance being there. Morally arbitrary. Next, restrictions on freedom are non-universalizable. Willing maximum requires freedom, so willing a violation of freedom would make the maximum self-defeating, thus contradictory. Thus, if I respect my freedom, then I would will others to respect my freedom, which entails that I must respect the freedom of others. Thus, the standard is consistency with equal out of freedom. Mandatory national service is coercive and forces people to work against their will, which employs them as means to the end, as they are not able to pursue their wishes. Next up. The U.S. economy is solid and growing leadership bound into pre-recession levels. Swanson 8.8.4. The U.S. added 209,000 jobs in July, surpassing economists' expectations, suggesting the economy continues to thrive. The labor market has made strong gains in recent months. Additions signify notable turning point. Employment has returned to what was before recession. Conscription kills growth. 1, loss of productivity, decrease output, and fear for 7. The draft looks at animal costs beyond those generated by professional army. For consequences, the draft needs to work in the army and education subject to experience. The draft is paid less than the market value of productivity, disruption, capital investments, and translate into substantial loss of GDP effectivity. Was subject to 1 year draft GDP to be depressed by 1% every year. 4, OCE countries' contributions have a considerable negative effect on GDP and growth. And 2, plans spends trillions new personnel and maintenance. Lycia 3. We're adopting more than 1.5 million draftees a year, equipping and training them to the same standards as our current military. Costs $3 trillion and $1 trillion a year to maintain. It outweighs his cost rankings because those are talking about the pay, but not about the amount of money that actually goes into training to training recruits in the first place. And spending high costs of free capital collapse the economy. Bakia 13. Overhang reduces growth significantly for both period creditors, lose confidence, and event higher interest. The government is attempting some more debt than bondholders by the government must tax or reduce economic activity or take debt, which would cause debt far higher. Interest rates have a pronounced impact on translate into less investment. Weak economy would provide fewer career and lower wage debt, pushing interest rates higher with severe effects. And economic collapse cause diversion of war. Foster 16. Expect Trump to engage in version of war leaders launch conflict to deflect attention away from Paul's Archie's 1982 invasion of Falklands to trade to expose villager behavior, simplistic leaders either world's black and white terms, incentives for risk, disruptive leaders rely on aggression, presidents simplistic or more likely to use force Trump rally public opinion, military action, 35% of Trump's references to groups saying it's harmful, to use words indicate less willingness to see, indicate Trump would respond to even minor conflict with force Trump initiate more than one major conflict per quarter, and specifically turns his civil military after stopping the way in which he ends up executing the act, the wars in which he decides to engage in are based on violent last which means that he doesn't get to leverage any of the readiness good stuff against this former. As an overview, the fair consequences are inaccessible because they rely on the fallacy of deduction, i.e. that the same thing that happened in the past will happen in the future, but that's unverifiable because we never know if those patterns will hold true, which means that they can be morally accountable and never valid. You say Belgium, one, there's no effect on moral uncertainty, it just means that people, that some people, i.e. utilitarians, are wrong about ethics, i.e. if we win the NC, just go there too. This already presupposes a moral theory of mutual because extinction is a consequence. 3, no reason why we care about finding morality in the future if we haven't found it yet. 4, this relies on 100% risk of extinction because they have to make it impossible for the rational will to exist, so risk of defense being due to gate, and there's never 100% chance of extinction. These intervening actors can always prevent the scenario from returning. Now you say math, but one, governments are just collectives of individuals who all bear continued responsibility. Lawrence 11. Whether there's unitary subject of action, actions recommended as reasoning occur through the end of the meeting, members to the state's purpose is to maintain freedom of privacy. When the state authorizes its purpose is to enable beings to have things of their own, the state does not have the happiness systems as intended ruling actions so they can just through which the people can rule themselves outweighs its justifications because it speaks to the formation of the state which outweighs the current purpose of the state because that just proves the state's being used incorrectly in status quo. 3 doesn't answer the NC, just things like the Constitution prove that we have something that we never trade off for freedom is one of those side constraints independently. Their mechanism presumes a consequential study of trade-offs between rights and also consoles because he has things like perfect versus imperfect duties which account for related trade-offs exist. Now the Enoch argument, once it's the only thing that people will is the intention of their actions when contradiction inherent into the intent of an action links to the standard consequences of an action are not part of what is willed by the agent since the agent does not need to will at any time to take the action. 2, without the intent force a distinction, it would be impossible to assign blame since everything and everyone would be equally responsible for the existence of every other impact, which makes morality impossible because everybody would be responsible for everything, which would mean that there wouldn't be any reason to guide action. 3, there's not a word in the card, it's just a bunch of flowery language. Now the first advantage. Recruitment behind the status quo, we reduce troop levels and have slow economy. Kurtz 13, the army has recruits every year. The military recruiting fewer active duty service. Overall, it reduces troop level and military recruitment maintains high standards now for skilled recruits. Kurtz 13, the military is seeking high skilled recruits. There's more competition. There's not many options out in the Pentagon. Estimates that only 1 in 4 today have cities youth are fit for the military. Medical conditions disqualified 35%. And Turner hurt the military readiness by reducing high skilled recruits. Warner 1, the armed forces can meet the challenge without a draft funding recruit quality. The military refuses to quality becomes more oriented to hijack the need for the DoD to redefine the roles of forces more clearly. The draft would deflect attention from this tech, reduce the number of personnel, the numerical demand for military manpower, all reasons made for high quality personnel, accentuated for the ABF, and specifically turn to like cyber war, readiness, suffer states and turn conscription, decrease readiness, hurts re-enlistment, morale, and discipline. Gen 08, draft forces into the military. People who have a strong distaste for the military presence of unwilling conflicts, increased turnover, re-enlisted, lower rate costs, discipline problems, recruits have better educated than drafted counterparts militaries. Fewer discipline problems, less turnover, and has more capability. Half of today's force of people with 5 years experience compared with only 1/3 you say Panetta personnel shortage now, but 1 turn funding is super high. Now we have the biggest military in the world, bigger than the next 8 countries combined. 2, we don't need as many troops now because of things like the technology where we have now the second advantage. Drone strikes to turn conscription leads to an increased amount of drone strikes because people just lobby for a change in order to increase striking out through drones instead of so the type of conflict change and drone strikes perpetuate a form of virtual war which just has global violence called Longer 13. The public little motive to reflect on consequences of drone when the public keeps them detached from the actual public of drones. There's no such human sacrifice. Thousands of soldiers died in voluntary drones and have been brought as a result of casualties, substance to actual soldier drones, corrode the stability of local governments and create recruits for never saying to oversee the government, help terrorists, increase the numbers of and amplify need for military personal drones, offer an easy route for the American war drone warfare as absolute most of them happen in the secret virtual war. A virtual option makes force more likely deaths from almost like hidden drones, produce military without a sense of commitment drones, prevention of war on terror, and to this turn out a point of doesn't assume modern day warfare from the 1900s. Drones are comparatively worse because they're impossible to check and define the supremacy of abroad. Basic point public perception of the military would rally, the public would rally against terror, especially sure given Trump's base more involvement would be more pushes for drone strikes against terrorists. Only the fear of losing the ADF keeps the public in check. Now the Elites pay their way out of real national pay their way out of real national service. If Brianna 12 penny, Nigerians consider the program to be a success. The success represents as way in recent years due to corruption. Officials accept the money from college graduates to pay for NYC completion. I'll cut what I didn't read.
Yeah. You seem like a new dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are we waiting for?
The doc. I'm sending it out. Send. Or sending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, is everyone good? What is your internal link, or what is your link for like the drones argument you made on case?
So the link evidence in the card itself indicates that whenever we end up like fearing the death of people, what we now switch to isn't things like, oh, we're not going to go to war. Instead, we just transition to using things like drones in order to strike out instead.
So it's like the fear of death leads to drone strikes?
The argument is that the fear of us going to war, instead of causing us to do things like not go to war, just causes us to change the nature of the war that we're fighting to one that is fought by drones instead of by soldiers.
Let's talk about Kant. So first off, what is outer freedom as a distinction from, I don't know, inner freedom?
What?
What is outer freedom versus inner?
It is the freedom that we have in relation to other beings in the world, i.e. to other agents.
How does like the framing make a distinction between like which types of freedom matters more, or like how we calculate these freedoms? AKA, if I prove that like doing the affirmative decreases or increases the amount of freedom, and then you prove that a different instance in which I decrease or decrease the amount of freedom, how do we weigh those two impacts?
I'm confused by the question.
Sure, I say I increase freedom, you say in this instance I decrease freedom. How do we weigh between who wins in that instance?
Sure. So I think that this is where Kant would discuss a couple of different things. First is the distinction between perfect and imperfect duties. Second is that it's a question of whether the restriction or like addition of freedom is intrinsic to the nature of the action, or whether it's something that occurs as a consequence of the action.
Okay. On the dissad, you said a loss of productivity and the internal about like opportunity cost. What is the impact on economic growth and the economy based on opportunity cost?
The argument is that it causes the GDP to decrease by like 1% a year, which is something that's empirical improvement, which decreases the ability for the economy to expand, which is bad. It causes economic decline.
Wait, why does economic decrease in growth? Why does that mean like Trump diversion, where the Trump diversion where it indicates like an economic collapse? You just said it's a decrease in growth.
Yes.
How do you still
Yeah, substantial collapses of the decrease of 1% of the GDP per year is pretty substantial. If you're dropping a whole percentage point a year, that's a pretty substantial decrease.
That's fine. What is the like link to the affirmative or like impact on the affirmative that weighs under your freedom evaluation? Because you said like literally one sentence. I'm a little confused on what the act does that restricts freedom.
Sure. It forces people to go into the military against their will if they don't want to, which is a violation of freedom.
Okay. What about violations of given the status quo? So for instance, I can't just like shoot all of y'all, or I can't like necessarily go and like I don't know have like sex with a 25-year-old when I'm like 16. How do those restrictions on freedom like weigh on your Kantian duty?
Sure. So the argument would be that a lot of those would be, or that like, for example, a shooting example would be justified because shooting itself is a like violation of our own freedom. So the restriction on yours is like a hindrance of that violation of freedom.
Sure. I just want to the sex argument.
What?
So for instance, we obviously have things besides like restricting other people's freedom.
Oh, sure.
Restrictions.
Yeah, probably has to do with like the development of like the national mind in order to answer this question. Also, that seems to presume a sort of like consequentialist understanding of what election look like. Oh, my bad. There's one term that I forgot to delete. I didn't delete I didn't read the 215 evidence. Sorry about that. Let me-
Sorry.
Which one did you use for remaining?
Remain.
Yes.
Order is going to be case in order of framing, advantage 1, advantage 2, the NC, and the dissent. Alright, is anyone not ready?
You said you're starting on the framework of case?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You should still prefer Washington because in case that there's an independent value, like the early responses that there have to be 100% risk of extinction, but this is not justifiable in case that we have a reason with only the way to have rationalization and things like reason and have discussions of things and access to freedom is a world in which we are alive, which is why it's a prayer question. They're framing also, we're going to extend the note 7 argument. They give really bad responses. They just indicated their only responses are in a world in which the end of the only way the intent foresight works is if the autonomous argument that this is just not true. The only reason they read this Lawrence 11 part, this argument, this evidence is really bad. It just says that the government is constructed by people who are individuals. This does not just apply that the government itself is individualistic or autonomous, aka it still has to apply to 100 different people within it and people who it applies to, which means it doesn't answer the words within the note 7, which indicates that it is empirically not an autonomous agent, which directly answers the Lawrence 7, and that they're not able to, and they have to appeal to some form of higher consequentialist notion, which is best that should be preferred because the actor of the 1AC in the resolution onto advantage 1, they said, previous happening now 1, the doesn't answer the readiness, which says that the readiness is, which is a question of perception, which is the Hunt 17 second, the Panetti 17 evidence indicates that we need 30 case soldier, which means that the increase in voluntarism doesn't solve refer our evidence because it's more recent. Next, they say the turn reduce the skill. This doesn't check this first. It doesn't answer the fact that our Hunt evidence is a question of perception that we're fighting against China and Russia. Second is that we saw the motive morale is being restricted now because of the overstretched military. This is the Panetti 17 evidence. Next, they say funding now. This doesn't take the limitations on the funding. And then also they said the joint strike first, not true otherwise they would exclusively be using joint strike second, not true under our framework. We solve the argument because we say we allow for a new understanding of how words are operated. That's McFadden 17 evidence on the advantage to this. They can mostly concede McFadden 17, which says that overall to increase this war, which should be independent under utopia because it decreases readiness and analysis to understand how wars operate on to then. One, all ethics require the value of human existence, and instances of existential resting on culture becomes a strategy of survival to avoid the annihilation, otherwise it's empty, and avoid of all moral value that's the law and skin of nine. Which is for a reason we need to protect the permanence of existence arguments about statistical trade-offs simply do not make sense when dealing with absolute like survival. We don't adjust our decisions when decisions become an existence. It's hard not to conceiving moral quality and giving at least connection to the real world general context without some sense of purposes, but bearing we can avoid a change to simply values rhetoric over substantial change. Second, life is a prior question. That's the Boschem argument. Third, life is independently valuable. All life's universal instinct is survival. Any moral system that doesn't take this into account fails to understand, explain, or give advice to people on moral questions. Fourth, states need utility. Even if Kant is correct about rational action, states are not autonomous, independent, and free. This was the argument made on case, and also the fifth argument was also implication of no intent foresight distinction. On to the contingent level. First, you're probably going to the aspects considered the only read once in, so I enforce and this is already exists within the status quo. Second, and the next second turn the cyber attacks that leads to a massive scale wars, which leads to the draft Vietnam War 1 and to prove that leads to overall less freedom and overall an increase in freedom. Second turn, alternatives those aren't right. The affirmative, like the world in which we have war is networks because it means that there's a restriction on the number of people in China's overall we're central on because they have restriction on things like the internet. On to the dissent. First, FI was in terms of dissent A, US and Japanese key to the economy, that's wall 2. Peace encourages independent investors in money abroad when dangerous wars from remote states worry less about it being independent when they are not concerned with the connection with what might be survived could hurt there and B. Great power wars lead to a lack of global trade and growth, which their impact card says the key internal warrant for economy. That's Brooks et al. 13. See, our internal offense outweighs on management because it causes great power wars to escalate and lead to nuclear alienation. Second, Harvey Trump thumbs it increases spending by billions and further unions and internally cards that don't have a bright line for the amount of money necessary. That's Weaver 97. Decent authors have easily passed the legislation that provide billions of dollars to Hurricane Harvey relief and extend cut off spending on the borrowing authority into December 3rd. No lengthy. We made everyone register for selective service and use a limited amount of the soldier space. You don't actually lead to these amounts spending the lazy evidence argument. And fourth, no opportunity cost because the SSS chooses the best troops that would not be less have a bad effect on the economy. That's South 17.
Could you send out new document that you read? Well, without reading it.
What time do you?
3:30? I'm gonna get the document. What was the second argument made on Lawrence?
On what?
On Lawrence.
On Lawrence?
Yeah. That was the answer to.
Yeah, so one is that the found evidence, whatever the evidence cited, the second evidence argues this and says that they're not autonomous. Second, that it only says that the governments are made of individuals. It doesn't make a claim that the state itself is autonomous in that nature. And give it to your answer.
Wait, where does the hunt evidence say anything about perception?
Yeah, it says we need to send a clear signal to Russia and China.
Where?
Let me get it. Quote, we're going to have to send, so it says officials in the Trump administration have indicated they may have to use the military power to confront China later on, like next sentence. See if a sentence that says we're going to have to send a clear signal, send China a clear signal that first, yeah, that's probably right.
Okay. Comp case. Framework. Framework then the drones.
So you're going for Kant and then the case?
Yes.
Is there a dog?
Nothing.
1 second, I need a plug in.
Here, there's the one on this side.
You can take my seat.
Thank you.
Leave me alone. I'm already gonna extend
I'm calling
it. You know.
I didn't know they're sharing.
You're not. No, don't get it twisted. Oh.
David, you good?
Yes.
Okay, everybody else? Yeah. A couple of the concessions are going to lose you the debate on framework. First is there are a lot of arguments on the line by line of Kant that preclude a lot of the 1AR answers that are ultimately going to take it out. Here's the framing issue going on between the on the extension of all the Bostrom stuff. All of that they can see the argument that those are still based on consequences of the app, i.e. solving extinction is a consequence of the app that matters, which means that if I win that any sort of a consequential theory is incoherent, or if I win that consequentialism is a bad way to look at things, then that means that you go negative. So the NC problem. Extend the practical reason, extending that the meta practical reason, extend the first argument, which is the inescapability claim that even questioning reason relies on a reason to question reason, which concedes the authority of reason, which means their framework collapses to mine, which means even if he wins every single award of the framework debate, that just means that you look to the NC framework proper. Also extend the action theory argument. The action theory argument is that whenever one wills up an action, one wills all the steps that make up the action. That is the only way to form a coherent story about what it means for me to walk to that door. Me walking to the door is not necessarily me walking to the door is not a bunch of disparate steps, but rather the action taken is one of me going the entire way. Only the idea of the rational will is able to unite all the steps into one action, which means that you have to look at the intrinsic properties of action and what the will of that action is in the first place. Also, they concede that action theory comes first because you can't say that people ought to do anything if there's no theory of action that's present in the first place, which outweighs all their arguments because they can't generate any normative force, which means that they can't generate any claims to say that anyone ought to take like an action. Now, extend the universality is key because only a priori logic is something that is constitutively true. Anything else is only true as a matter of chance based on empirical circumstances, which means that it's not morally binding. Extend that restrictions on freedom are non-universalizable because that require freedom in order to will a maxim. So it would be a contradiction to will a restriction on freedom. So extend the standard of consistency of equality of freedom. Also, extend the contention that military service that military service is coercive because they use people as a means to end by forcing people to do things that they might not want to do. They say that's just one sentence, but it's a warranted sentence about the way about why the absolute restriction of freedom, which means that I still get actually the contention. Now there are two arguments there about that the act overall decreases freedom are still based on a consequentialist notion of what freedom looks like, which means that at that point I'm still winning offense, or which means that those don't link to the framework because those are not like because those aren't constitutive to the property of the action gap. They're not intrinsic to it. They're just a consequence that follows. Now, one by one, I can like 4 arguments that I made. His first argument is Jablonski, but this is the same argument that this functions the same argument that Bostrom is making, which means that if I extend reasons why Bostrom is false, that's going to take this out as well. He says life's the prior question, but no, it's not because we don't need life in order to tell us what is moral or what is not moral in the first place. Also, his life prior question arguments are still based on his life prior question arguments are still based on a consequentialist notion of what it means to preserve life in the first place. His next argument is that life is an independent value, but it's a question of how we formulate the path to taking a certain action, which means that action theory necessarily includes there. Last argument is that states are autonomous. I'll answer that on the problem. So now the async. Big issue here is that they're mishandling the Lawrence evidence. So extend Lawrence that governments are just collections of individuals, so their responsibilities collapse to individual actions anyway. He says that it doesn't justify that the government is individualistic. But that misunderstands the argument. The argument is that just because you are a congressperson doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly your obligations as a moral agent go away. Which means that just misunderstands the argument that I'm making. He says that the government isn't autonomous, but argument is that every single person in the government has to act in an autonomous way, which is sufficient to respond there. He's also considered the argument that now on the intent foresight distinction stuff. He's conceded a couple key arguments on intent foresight. Extend that without the intent foresight distinction, it would be impossible to assign moral blame to anyone, because everyone would be responsible for every single action that a consequence takes for any other consequence, which means that we have to reject that idea for morality to hold any sort of value in the first place. Outweighs these questions the very ability for morality to exist. And now the overview argument that I made. Even if you think that he's winning, literally all of his life precludes arguments and things like that, one key concession is going to lose him access to those. He's conceded the fallacy of induction argument that consequences relies on the idea that in the future consequences will turn out the way that they were in the past. But that is something that is completely unverifiable because we don't know whether the same consequences will exist, which means that we can't actually be sure if we're doing things like preserving life in the first place. Right. So I've already answered the Bostrom stuff in the overview that I wrote on the NC. He's conceding a lot of reasons for why government obligations collapse to individual obligations, and is conceding framing for why action theory, i.e. the way that we formulate what an action looks like, precedes any other normative evaluation, which means I'm definitely winning the NC. Now I'm going to go for the Jones turn. Extend the drone strike. The act just resulted in an increase in drone strikes. The warning of the health program is incredible. It indicates that what ends up happening in the status quo, because we have so many drone strikes that are available to us now, people aren't suddenly going to become more connected to the military. They're not going to start becoming more concerned about what happens politically. Rather, they're just going to start caring about all they're going to do is push for new types of strikes. In this case, drone strikes are taken out. He says that he inspires a new. They create a new understanding of how war operates. But our argument is that that's not true, because that understanding is now based on drone strikes. Will not be based on drones. Instead, he says, which also responds to all of his other classic civil military gap arguments in the first place. He's also conceded that his evidence doesn't take into account the way that the drone strikes are used as stats.
framing, the advantage, like the drone strike stuff, then
So, just framework on the act page and then drone strikes.
is anyone not ready? Oh yeah, also just to preempt, this is like, also, I don't know where you flow these arguments, so I'm putting it on this page, but you probably also may put them on the other page, like the NC page, so it might get a little confusing, so I'm just gonna do it on the framing page. Anyway, anyone not ready? Alright. Two key arguments we're going for the round. First is that life is independently valuable. They have not answered the fact that the survival of the humanity is the one thing that, or survival of the race species is the one thing that constitutes and is spread throughout all species and humanity, which has two implications. First, this means that their understanding of freedom is insufficient because it doesn't actually articulate why we have actions. The one with survival is the most important thing for all species. This means that rationality has a freedom does not understand the reason we have action, which is an unjustification for why their evaluation and their standard is incorrect. Second is that it also proves our notion that life has become as a prior question, aka their rational decisions or debate about rationality still does not answer the fact that life is a prerequisite to that notion, aka the Bosch evidence is just pretty damn and indicate that there's value, aka questions of things like value and moral questions do not exist in a world in which we do not have life, which indicates that life has become a prior question to all of this random things. The second key argument we're going for is no intent foresight distinction for the state. This is going to be pretty important. There are a couple justifications. You notice evidence is really good on talking about answering the Lawrence 11 argument, which the only response to the Lawrence evidence says of the collection of individuals within the government. We can see that obviously the government has individuals within it, but this does not mean that the government itself is individualistic and autonomous in its nature. It has to be complicit with the people who voted for it. There are people who voted for those politicians who then also have their own autonomous nature, which means there's no autonomous one singular entity which is making their own path to victory, which is the note 7 evidence. It answers it explicitly, literally the phrasing in their argument. Next, the other response is that it's impossible to decide moral blame, but the state is already blamed for all the actions that they are complicit with, which also proves our argument, which is that this is also not offensive under their own framing. This is not a justification for why it's bad. Also, all their responses are in a world in which they are autonomous individual bodies. These moral agency arguments are only complicit, or only work in a world in which they are autonomous, which is answered by the note 7. This means that the terms that we read on the contingent level are now offense, because it's also the actual the thing that a result of the affirmative as the distinction on freedom onto the advantage 1. The readiness advantage, I probably outweighs the risk of drone strike because it would also lead to extinction. Also, probably so I would on D2, and also the increase in drone strike would also still be a form of deterrence, which would decrease the amount of wars. And we also saw that something bad in 17 evidence indicates that we were to account for the new ways of war onto NC. Onto the contingent level itself, there are there's one key concession. First is that there links to the status quo. There's already the coercion of freedom in the status quo, which means there's no independent reason why the affirmative increases. They have one sentence and the one it's just like, oh, we somehow increase coercion because we require them to register for the selective service. But this is already happening. If you have to register for your driver's license, this is not a restriction on freedom. These already exist within the status quo, which means there's no actual link to the affirmative. Even when we lose all the intent foresight distinction arguments. And second is the turn argument, which is that China is worse. The intent of the one you see is to actually increase freedom. So also, if we lose no intent the intent foresight distinction, we also have impacts under that. Second, China's worse in a couple of reasons. First, they don't allow things like internet access and overall decrease, or have more restrictions on freedom, which means in a world even under his framing where utilitarian consequentialistic framing, you're still going to evaluate the one you see because the world of the negative is one in which there's more coercion and more loss of freedom.